Hey, bud.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
How are we all this morning?
So far, so good. I didn't get any phone calls from the superintendent saying school was closed, so.
Nope, you didn't. Listen, and the superintendent was some kind of excited to go to work today. I'll tell you that.
Yep. By far.
The only problem was they couldn't have parties in the office last week to enjoy it.
No, that's true. That is true. They couldn't. They probably didn't miss me at all. But notice Kathy is mum on that.
Very quiet.
Very, very quiet. Ben, did you ever get an instructional UA plan, pre-K-5?
Instructional UA plan?
Well, just remember we had said, we asked that, if they, because the UAs have been talking to specifically art and music about not being on a cart, we asked them to put together a plan. Did they do that?
So at the middle school, they're already in classrooms due to our
Right. I'm talking pre-K-5.
Nope.
Nope.
I have my plan for 3-5, which would be similar for music, and PE's different down at Libby Tozier. Do you want me to send that to you now? It's a Google Doc.
Nope. Yeah, you can send it, but we're gonna talk about it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I got nothing. Nothing.
Okay.
Who do I send it to, Andy? You and Kathy, or?
Yep. And then you can, when we talk about it, you could share. I'll give you power. Share your screen.
Lucky me. Hopefully she gave me, yes, editing rights. All right, this is all three on one of them.
My husband and puppy are having their first day of work together.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
So I just texted my husband saying, "How's your work buddy doing?" And she does not like the cord on the regular phone. She never barks. We haven't heard her bark yet. And he goes, the only time she barks is when he's talking and the cord is moving. And he goes, only when I'm on the phone. And she barked.
That's awesome.
So it's going well. It started the day he took her out and he slipped and fell on and landed. He caught her, but he was down and out.
That's not good.
It's like, have a happy Monday. I'm going back to work.
It's kind of like every time I do a meeting from home, it never fails. Somebody's got to walk dogs by our house so my two dogs lose their minds. It just never fails. I don't even know. They're unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Morning.
Go.
Woo! Monday
All day.
Monday after vacation.
Yep.
Let's do this.
Listen, I was excited.
As you should be.
Got a haircut, Marco?
Oh yeah. You like that?
Yeah.
Looking sharp
Thank you.
or shiny.
Shiny. Appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I add product to get shine. So
If you just shaved your head, you wouldn't have to worry about it.
almost did in high school, actually.
Oh,
I got a
really?
haircut.
Yeah, my father did not want me to do that, but
I finally got a haircut Friday, which I needed, and I had to call the barber to make sure they were all good that I come, because I'd been out of quarantine. And I get in there, and my barber and then his wife run the shop, and his wife walked over. She goes, Andy, I have some product that might thicken you up in the back. Thanks for that.
I still think it's funny that you take longer at the hairdresser than it does me.
Oh, I'm there a good solid hour anyway.
An hour?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's, because he's shooting the breeze. That's why,
Well, I got to have a beard trim. I've got to, yeah, all that stuff. I don't know. I like the barbershop. It's my one place. All right. It is 10 o'clock. Who are we missing?
Is Jeremy coming?
Is Jeremy coming, Heather? I didn't hear from him.
I haven't heard from him yet.
Okay.
From Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be here. He'll
Okay.
be here. I think he's just getting set up right now in Melissa's office. He was in the middle of a class. We
Okay.
just had to bust him out. So he should be joining us shortly.
And I talked to Jody this morning. Jody will be in and out. She does have some medications to dispense this morning and things like that. So she'll be in and out. Oh, she's here.
Jody.
Morning, Jody.
Hello.
All right. So I think what we should do is get going. Jeremy will join us momentarily, I'm assuming. So put together this meeting. There are a couple of things that we need to talk about. And I sent the agenda out. I added a couple of things to the agenda yesterday. I hope you all saw that. But I think where I want to start is I'll skip the first one. We'll start with the new choral guidance. So Kathy, do you want to talk about that?
Not necessarily, no.
When did that, I was just out
And you're
checking
on.
the DOE site. I saw the last update on that was last year for choral.
February 12th it came out.
Yeah.
But they haven't updated the website because the instruction, I just finished reading it before this
Yeah.
and it hadn't changed since last fall when it was updated for clarity.
No, it came out February 12th in a priority notice. What I'm finding is the website isn't getting updated the same way the priority notices are. So
Yeah. And that was I had quite a few phone calls this morning because some people go to the US Department of CDC or the US Department of Education and then don't go to the main one, and there's conflicting things, as it should.
yeah.
So I guess I was just kind of curious with Marco and Ben. I mean, I sent it to them. I highlighted the pieces and what they felt like was going to be changes on their end, I guess.
Yeah. How is that going to change what we're doing with regards to chorus?
It's going to allow us to have chorus finally at the middle school.
Okay.
Well, what's
we
the
just
guidance, what's the new guidance say? Because it was like 14 feet,
Yeah.
outdoors,
So-
not facing each other, masks.
So
So,
I'm looking.
yep.
Go ahead, Kat.
So before it was had to be outside. So now they're allowing us to do indoors, and it's that 6 foot, bubble between each singer. Everyone has to be facing the same direction. So no circles or semicircles. So it's no different than if we were sitting in rows, they're standing in rows singing. They can only
And it's 6 feet.
6 feet. So a 6 by 6 bubble is what they're saying. So it's not a 3 foot, it's 6 by 6 all the way through, all facing the row. So picture just if we're in like desks, but they're kind of standing in their 6 by 6 bubble, facing forward. They can only be 30 minutes of singing. Maybe mute. I don't know. Okay. And then, so obviously for students that have instruments, right? So reducing performance. Well, they're saying like, try to reduce how many people are singing at the same time.
Right.
So kind of having, I don't know, like a choral kind of thing, if that's necessary. Having them sing softly, not like loud and proud. That's where they were saying like use amplifiers, which we had purchased to increase the ability to have the low volume and versus like conversational volume is the term that they keep saying. So like you're not singing really loudly. They should not be sharing sheet music, any other materials, just like in regular classes. And it talks about using physical barriers. So if you can use like mask and shields, and clean all of those things in between. So that's kind of like the chorus.
And I
So
did,
you
I
have
did,
to wear
a hard
masks.
no inside. Now it's you can with 6 feet, low singing, no
and
sharing.
masks.
photos.
But they have to wear masks.
Yes. Yep. Yep. I just
It says-
I
So
sent
the
it to
difference
everybody.
is it's 3-layer mask.
Yeah.
And surgical style masks are required. So that would be the conversation, that do we have 3-layer masks, and making kids change out into those if they don't have a 3-layer mask. Because we've been letting kids bring their own in, but for
Right.
music, it has to be a well-fitted 3-layer surgical style mask.
Glenn, do we have any 3-layer masks?
Well, the masks that you got under PPE those are the surgical, those should all,
No.
No.
well,
Because the before was only, you needed to be 2 layers.
no,
Right.
it's been 3 layers according to the federal for a long time.
For the
Going
feds,
back-
but not for the state.
Correct.
Well, I don't know how the state can make it less than federal. It's kind of like a law. You can make it more severe, but you can't make it less severe. So the recommendation has always been 3 layers. Cause I know when my wife made some, looked it up. First couple she made were only 2 layers, and then she realized it. So those were gone and she made 3-layer ones.
But the framework for reopening schools was 2 layers for masks, which is why we didn't allow gaiters to start with, single ply gaiters. And that framework came from the US Department of Ed because it was tied to the CRF funds. I mean, it's no different than the current recommendations, the governor's orders with regards to quarantining. Quarantining is 10 days in the state of Maine, but the US CDC still says 14. And so that's been kind of the hard part with regards to, which one do you follow? I mean, we have to follow the state of Maine guidance, but we don't have any 3-ply masks, 3-layer masks. We didn't get those from the Department of Ed. All we got were two layers, right, Jody?
These are 3-ply.
We do have some 3-plies. Okay. All right,
So
good.
This is the only box I have here that I can check, but
Are they
Okay.
surgically styled? That's what, like,
yes.
Okay. So we do have those. All right. I knew we had the 2-ply ones. I didn't know we had the 3. So that's good to know. So that actually helps us. We'll make sure those come out and make sure we have those. So what else, Kath?
that's pretty much the new guidance.
Okay. So how does that look for you, Ben?
It'd be easy, very easy.
So, I just sent the guidance to everybody. It's in your emails. Marco, how about you at the high school for choral instruction?
We don't have chorus right now, only because Gary's here and Sophrona's at the middle school. However,
Okay.
we do have rock ensemble.
Yep.
We have a beginner class and a master class, if you will. And they do have some singers in there. They have been not singing or just talking essentially into the microphone at this point in time while wearing masks, only because of the guidance that we've been given.
So I think what this does is will allow us to open back up chorus. How does everybody feel about that?
I like it.
I would just remind them not to use mics, because you're now spitting. We can't really sanitize. I would just suggest that singing, that's fine, but not using microphones and things.
It's going to be difficult for a rock singer to sing at a conversational level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what is there something else we might be able to figure out with that? I mean, if I talk with Gary, I mean, I understand your concern about sanitizing the microphones, but
Yeah, it's about, especially if you have 2 classes, like how are you going to sanitize the microphone? If they do it, then they can't use it, right? They can't be sharing that,
Yep.
that piece. So it's no different than our protocols with our books. Like you use it, then it's got to kind of stay in quarantine for that 72 hours.
If we could find a way, I mean, I'm curious to see how many microphones we have. Like if we were able to use like one per person, or if they were like assigned to that person
Yeah.
and then not used again. I'm sorry, go ahead,
Yeah.
Kathy.
Yeah, I was just say it just also like microphone, if that makes them think that they can sing loudly or talk loudly, you know what I mean? It's just gonna make sure that
Mhm.
the microphone doesn't then allow them, I mean, it does allow them to have an amplified voice so that they can be heard over
Right.
the music. But I would just be cautioned that it's not the same as what it was
Yep.
before in terms of volume.
Yep.
And so
Understood.
did they update for musical instruments? I mean, that was still quite a distance, cost over all the woodwinds and all the brass so that the air's in, spit valves are cleaned in appropriate manners and locations. If you have a rock ensemble, you know, the spacing between the instruments. From my days playing the tuba, I had a big area I had to go and cover if it was the case.
That wasn't the last time that was updated was don't quote me, I think it was like December 29th or something.
I think it was December. Yeah.
I thought the band, I saw the band was updated in January.
Well, we reviewed it in January, but it was the same time that they reviewed phys ed as well. And they gave us ventilation on the buses and all that fun stuff. So those haven't been updated in a while. And our music department has been following those new guidelines since the new year.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, our music teachers have done a fabulous job, just from my perspective, of trying to be creative in how they do these things to make sure we follow the rules. Would you guys agree with that, Ben, Jamie, Marco? Yeah.
I have a little concern about band only because we want to start it back at the middle school. And I'm just unfamiliar with the process. Maybe Mark and I can talk about how it's working at the high school. So.
Yeah. I know that I've seen Gary. I mean, I space people out really well. I mean, there's the 10-foot requirements or whatever. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Gary's had a good plan for that, I believe, right, Marco? Yeah. Okay.
So the other piece too, I mean, obviously for Ben, you're going to have to look at your space. They suggest moving to either your stage or something else that you can spread them out a little bit more and they're all facing the same way. You don't, like even a theater or that kind of stuff. So kind of just paying attention to, you might have to change rooms in order to meet that 6x6 bubble.
Well, it's 10 feet, is it 10 by 10?
6x6.
6x6 for choral, but
yes.
for band, it's longer. And part of it is because of how much you actually have to push out the air in order for a musical instrument. And the amount of spit that actually comes out of the instrument is different than if you are singing softly in a conversational tone.
Not to digress, did we ever think, I'm just going to say this to all of you, did we ever think that we'd be in a meeting talking about the amount of spit that comes out? I mean, did we ever think that we would be there? Because it's just one of those things where it just kind of hit me momentarily, like, wow, here we are, a bunch of educators talking about the amount of spit coming out of an instrument. So there's firsts every day, right? So Ben, thinking about 6x6, 10 by 10, where do you think you can do that?
The number of kids that are interested in chorus right now, because we haven't had any. I could put the chorus in the band room, but Gary would have to use the stage.
Okay. Okay. And the stage is pretty open right at the moment, right?
Yeah, well, it has we do have those walls that slide in place.
Yeah.
But it's the only space large enough to do a 10 by 10 square for any amount of students.
Okay.
So if you can open one of those slides so it's not an enclosed space would be better.
Yep.
So like if you could open the cafeteria one and they're singing out that way, that would be better.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay. And that will allow the ventilation system to work better too, for sure.
Yes.
So.
But those first set of tables, if it's before lunch or whatever, should be wiped down.
Well, it'll be after the day's out. It'll be at it'll be after 12 o'clock. It'll be the last class. And it won't affect anybody in the cafeteria. So
But it would still need to be washed before breakfast in the morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do anyway, so it's easy.
All right. Anybody else on this topic?
Andy, did you want to talk about regular music classes like at pre-K through 5 or no?
Sure. I mean, we can.
Or are we going
Certainly.
on to a different part of the agenda for if they move back into the classroom or not?
Yeah, well, that's where I was going to go next.
Okay, I will be patient. Thanks.
All right. So I'm excited for our kids, right? I think we have kids that this is a big thing that they enjoy doing. So to be able to open this back up with the new guidance makes me happy. I think that's really important. As long as we can do it safely. I will work with Glenn. Glenn is here to dig out all of our 3-ply masks. Marco and Ben and Jamie will get those to all your buildings. Glenn, we have those in a storage container. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we have those at the storage container down in the parking lot at the middle school, I think.
Okay.
Might
right.
even have some out back here, but I'll double check at central office too.
All right. So one of the things that we should do, Glenn, this is just my 2 cents. Could you, once we dig those out, just run them by Jody? Are you okay taking a look at them to make sure they're 3-ply? Yeah, just run those by her.
Yeah, absolutely. They usually say right on the side of the case, but I'll bring them over so she can take a look at them.
Okay, awesome. Just want to make sure that we're following those rules. All right, moving on. We had at the last meeting we had talked to. I think we've talked about this every time. Specifically, art and music at the pre-K 5 have asked quite a few times to move back into their classrooms. We have consistently said no as a group, but one of the things we did say last time was to put together a plan to bring to us. So Jamie got a plan for Carrie Ricker. So could you share that with us, Jamie?
Sure. Yeah. I'm not muted, right?
Nope.
Okay. So here are what each of the teachers shared for a plan on moving back into their space. One of the things that was nice to listen to in conversations when I met with them the Friday before break was that they're already, they're sanitizing so many things. Everybody has their own individual materials anyway. That's already the situation for UAs in the classroom. So that would not mean much change to move back into their classroom spaces. They would keep using those individual sets of materials and whatnot in art. So do you want me to go through all 3 right now, Andy?
Yeah, might as well.
Okay, so for art, going back into the classroom, the cleaning and sanitizing practices would be used the same as she's been doing when traveling to classrooms. Each student uses their own individual materials. At the end of class, materials will be set aside to sanitize at the end of the day, and she does have the space in her setting for that. She'll distribute new and clean sanitized materials for each class throughout the day, never using the same ones. At the end of the day, they'll be sanitized and ready to use for the next day. Between classes, she is totally fine taking that part on herself. She has 5 to 10 minutes between each class to go around and wipe down tables and seats. So we wouldn't need additional custodial support for that. Students will sanitize hands as they enter the room, wash and sanitize before leaving, obviously masks the whole time. She has tables with individual supplies and will hand out and or collect any materials used during class time. So again, exactly what she's been doing in the classrooms, but she could do that in the art room instead. And students will have assigned seats with proper social distancing requirements in place. Ben, I don't know if do you want to add anything about pre-K 2 where you have art right now, not me?
No, it's more than doable.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that a big piece of this, my concern is the amount of things that need to happen in between classes.
Yeah.
So not only are kids gonna have to put materials in a certain place, she's gonna have to pull out the new ones, wash. She's talking about tables and chairs, but she's gonna have to do doorknobs, sink knobs, all of that in between those 2 classes because it's different kids going through. And is she able to do that in the 5 minutes of switching?
Well, and that class is only 40 minutes long, and there's just gonna be a lot. There's gonna be a lot to touch before the new kids come in.
Now, granted, she's probably having the kids place their materials into a bin of some sort. But I just worry about the amount of cleaning that would need to be done to be adequately clean between two, but that's just my concern.
And I would just, add to that, that the high school, has been doing this since we started. So, as far as, materials, being used for one particular class and then set aside for, cleaning at another time. And we've been doing that right along. They switch classes every day. So it's not anything new, at least as far as the district is concerned, and how we're moving from one class to another.
But you're having kids wipe down the desk, correct?
That is correct. Not
Right.
all.
The difference here is pre-K 5, the teacher's doing it. The kids are not wiping down their own area.
It's also
Are they
the,
not-
go ahead,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No,
I was just going
please.
to say, it's also the number of items. I mean, you compare the high school where, you're talking older students to pre-K 5 and you walk into a pre-K 5 classroom, the number of items that could be touched between blocks, Legos, little stick figures, whatever it is quite substantial between the two buildings.
Are they capable of wiping the desks down on their own, or is that not something you want them to do?
No, they're not. They're not. We can't put somebody at the next student's safety in the hands of a kindergartner to wipe the desk down appropriately.
Yeah. I mean, look, I got an 8-year-old at home. I'm looking at this through the lens of my 8-year-old at home. There's a huge difference in what we can ask a 12, 13 to 18-year-old to do versus what we can an 8-year-old. I mean, my 8-year-old is really good, but he's going to take a sanitizer. I mean, I asked him to wipe the table off the other day and he got about a quarter of it. Right. I mean, that even showing him how to do it. I have some significant concerns about asking pre-K 5 students, 5th grade, maybe, but I have some significant concerns about that. I just don't think we can. And we certainly can't ask a 5-year-old to do it.
So just before this meeting I went on DOE and I read the latest guidance on the schools and reopening and all that. And it still recommended that cohorts and that students don't change rooms, teachers change the rooms when possible, that we don't have the students going from classroom to classroom. That hasn't really guidance. I can't see that has changed in a long time. And with that being said, to make an exception for UA I just don't think is appropriate. I'm not even sure. I mean, in high school, it talked about high schools a little bit differently. And there it talked about, if possible, that the teachers would rotate instead of the students. But we know that's not possible because students are taking different classes. If we could get a 20 group of students together, we're all taking the same classes, then we can move teachers in and out of the room. But that's just not possible when people are taking a variety of courses throughout the day, even with block scheduling. So I just don't think that the guidance that's out there, that the guidelines and the best practices that are published really allow for our students to go during the day out of their regular classroom down to an art or music classroom for their class and then go back again. And then all the extra, things that have to happen. I just think it goes against what is published by DOE.
And I agree with Bob. So here's my take too. And I want to hear from everybody else as well. But my thing is this: what we're doing right now, K-5 is working. As far with this is concerned. And I look at this and I appreciate Jen and Wade wanting to take this on to some degree, but I just look at I share Kathy's concern too. I look at the volume of work that has to happen in transition time. I don't know that it's possible for one person to do that. And it's not like we can dedicate custodial staff to go in there and do this in between. I don't know. I'd like to hear from others as well.
you know, it's been working at SPS. I haven't heard anyone really complain here about the need to have kids go to the UA classes. I mean, the UA room at the SPS right now has a lot of storage in it for chemicals and stuff. I just don't know how it would work here. I really don't. I mean, we
Okay.
could do it if we had to, but you know, the wheel isn't broken. So
Yeah, I struggle to see it working at pre-K 2, for sure. 3, 5, I don't know. I feel a little bit different, but pre-K 2, I do think that would be a huge challenge.
Glenn?
Yeah, I agree. It's, like you said, dedicating a custodial staff to be able to do that is a task within itself. I just, with the challenges, I don't see how that's going to be done and be done safely.
Okay, Marco?
I was just going to say it's unproven. I mean, I think we're speculating to a certain extent, and I would say probably with 3, 4, and 5 more than anything else. Obviously, safety is number one, and I understand where people's concerns are, but we haven't tried it. These people haven't gone through the process of having to do each of these steps that they've outlined, and I think if it was a bigger concern or a bigger issue, that we would want to give them the opportunity to do so. But it doesn't seem to be that. Like, I mean, if it's working or if it's going as well as possible, then stay the course.
Okay, Norma Jean?
For me, sort of like with Marco, we're being safe right now. What we're working is keeping our numbers lower. So, I mean, if we're going to do something that might increase that, then I would say stay the course we are now.
Jim?
Yeah, I agree with everybody else. I think we're staying safe, and let's keep the numbers down.
Okay, Heather?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Just keep things the way they are.
Okay, Jody?
I'm curious as to what the actual benefit to students is by moving them to the art room. I see here in the music explanation that they could expand some of the instruments that they're using, but what's that benefit to students?
That's a great question. Anybody want to try? It's interesting you say that, Jody, because as I read this, I'm not sure. I don't know what would be different for students between the spaces. Ben or Jamie, any thoughts?
It depends on the student. Like our kiddos in, I know, Kathy, we got to rename it, but the behavior program here at Libby Tozier, we see far few issues this year because there are less transitions. So it's a benefit to have it on a cart in the classroom. But then there are the kiddos who sitting in the same space all day minus recess and lunch. That's a little more challenging. So sometimes I think that different setting, change of scenery is good for kiddos, depending on the kid. It's not good for all of them. But yeah, I mean, the teaching wouldn't change a ton. Masks would still be required, all of that. So it wouldn't necessarily change exactly what's happening in that class time drastically. Like Wade said, he could use keyboards that he can't move those around on the cart. So right now they don't have access to those. He's hauling ukuleles back and forth and things like that. So there would be a little bit more advantage in music. PE would definitely be a little bit more, that's down on the bottom, sorry, a little bit more, and his is more black and white about the rules than the actual what would change. But on the super cold days when he has to go to a classroom, that would look much different, being able to access the gym than it does in the classroom. But they are going outside almost all the time, Kyle and Jason for sure. So I don't know if that answers you or not, Jody, but a little bit.
But if you look, Jamie, on the phys ed one, number 6, 7, and 8 are all about having somebody else clean the things in order for the next group to be able to utilize them. Having students wipe down their own equipment, wiping down the equipment himself, and having custodial come down after each class. So in order to be able to do that, we're requiring other people to do that sanitation. So that, I think, is a big difference from phys ed to art.
Yep.
I mean, frankly, from my perspective, I think it's a great thing that our kids are actually getting outside more. But that's a me thing more than anything else. From a perspective of movement and things like that, fresh air transfer. I like the idea of them getting outside more for sure.
Yep.
Jody, does that answer your question?
It did. I think that I would agree with stay the course.
Okay, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think staying the course makes sense. My perspective, in Lewiston, even the middle school isn't doing UAs other than they do them at home. So they leave at 12:30, they go home and they do them remotely anyway. So, it makes sense with what I'm seeing, to do whatever you can to limit their movement across cohorts in different classrooms.
Okay, Nancy?
Yeah, I would just keep it status quo for now.
Okay. All right. I think that's pretty unanimous. We'll keep it status quo for now until that guidance changes at this point. So thank you all. Good conversation. All right. Jimmy, there we go. All right. Next topic was Gators. Apparently something changed there.
So it's not that it changed per se. So originally, there is obviously through this whole piece, there's been lots of research and updates, and on the CDC guideline or the CDC website, they do some wonderful graphics for people of like, when should you wear your mask? What mask? How should you wear your mask? The do's and the don'ts. And Gators is one of those ones that was for, I would say, from August when we first started to have these conversations was Gators are not great. And part of that, I think, was a lot of the Gators out there were also one ply at the time. And so in the CDC graphic, Gators were at one point X'd out or was not enough information to determine. I would say around Christmas, maybe around Christmas, I feel like the time has elapsed for me. There's been some reports and some heavy controversy of to Gator or not to Gator. And they've actually ruled that the 2-ply Gators could be acceptable. We have not gotten actual any guidance, but the CDC in their pictures have done it's under special considerations. It's with the face shields as well as Gators, and it says necessary, like if need be kind of thing. So Gators has been a hot topic or a conversation. We still get phone calls from parents about to allow Gators or not, the 2-ply Gators. And I think it's worth having a conversation because we do have some kids that don't do well with masks. Thinking of maybe some of Nancy's population, that maybe having an option of a Gator might allow more kids to have a face covering. So it is approved. I can pull it up if you want to see the thing, but it literally just shows it. And maybe Jody can give us more background information on to Gator or not to Gator, but
I think you said it. I mean, it's been very controversial, and there's been a lot of talk about it everywhere about Gators or not Gators.
How are we going to enforce 2-layer Gators?
it's no different than we enforce 2-layer masks now when they're coming from home. So if you see here, this is what the new CDC guidelines, special considerations: wear a Gator with 2 layers or fold it to make it 2 layers. And you can see face shields are still not recommended.
All right, what are our thoughts?
So this is just the mask section of the CDC.
I've never actually worn a Gator, so I don't know.
I actually prefer the Gator.
What's that?
I prefer the Gator to the face mask because I'm a heavy mouth breather.
Okay.
When I work out or I'm outside, I much prefer a gaiter over a mask.
Thoughts? Open the floor up. Jeremy?
Personally, I think you're going to run into the issue of trying to distinguish between 1 and 2 ply, and people own these before this has all happened, and so people are going to wear the ones that they purchased that are 1 ply anyway. If you start letting people wear them, where the masks have largely been produced as part of this, and a lot of them have followed the 2 ply or 3 ply needs. A lot of gaiters were bought before that was made certain. I know a lot of people have them and are trying to wear them in public, even though they're 1 ply, and it's their way of sort of subverting the rules. And I don't know if that makes sense to be in a school place.
I think Jeremy makes a good point, is that not a lot of people had masks around their pockets or around the house prior to the pandemic, and everybody starting to get masks because of that. And the masks were being, for the most part, developed and sold in order to cut down on the transmission of the viruses, and not just to provide some warmth that the gaiters were providing. I think the gaiters were out there and have been around for years, and people have them, are going to continue to use them. They probably aren't buying new ones, and they were never initially manufactured to go and prevent the spread of viruses. They were just manufactured for the warmth. I guess I've never worn a gaiter, so I don't know, but I would think wearing a gaiter for 6 hours would be much more difficult for a person than to wear a mask for 6 hours. But that's me, with no experience. But I'm a little concerned, like I said, how we enforce it. The masks, we're not checking those either. The ones that we hand out, if somebody doesn't have a mask, or at least 2 ply, and then some, we have some 3 ply. I would say, I would like to stay the way we have been. It's just, if the 1 ply doesn't offer us any protection, then why would we want to open ourselves up to go and lower the safety that we're providing to the students and staff?
Okay. Who else? Anybody? I can tell you from my perspective, I'm on the fence here. I think we've done a really good job of, I credit our staff. I mean, our teachers are doing a fabulous job of making sure students are wearing 2 ply masks. I think they are checking every day. There is a potential, as with everything, to get lax, and I don't believe that's happened. However, this adds a new wrinkle, an extra thing to check for. So I don't know. I'm up in the air. I don't know. Having never worn one, I don't know. But I do worry, as Jeremy pointed out, that we'll have students whose parents will just give them the one they got, and they'll come in wearing a 1 ply, and then we'll have fights on our hands that we haven't had. That's my big thing. I do see some benefit, as Kathy pointed out, for special populations, specifically kids who are struggling to wear a mask in some of our special purpose programming. I think this might be a better option for them. I don't know. I'd like to hear from others what their thoughts are.
So
Marco?
for transportation, sorry.
Go ahead.
So for transportation, I don't know how the bus driver would check to see if that's a 2 ply. Right now, if we got students that don't have a mask, every bus has a box of masks, such as this. And if the student doesn't hand one, we hand them one. So they're at least getting a 2 ply mask, which we know about. And the rule was, if they refused, we don't pick them up because the guidelines say you have to wear a mask. And we had that issue. At the beginning, you had some students that are, defiant, which is fine. But how do we do that, trying to get the student on the bus and verify that that's a 1 ply or a 2 ply? And then, the bus driver can't get out of the seat. So the student has to get up on the bus. And then if it's a 1 ply, that student, you got to turn around and do you send them home? I don't know how that would work for, I mean, high school, middle school, they're a little bit older students, but for your younger ones, I don't know how that would necessarily work.
Okay, Marco?
Yeah, I am not interested actually in opening it up to Gators. Just a couple of reasons. I mean, essentially what, everybody's already said, just, we've done a really nice job making sure that people are wearing masks. And that's been the message from the get-go, is that, you need to wear a mask, wear a mask, wear a mask. We've had kids come in with Gators and we just say, you need to replace that with a mask. You can grab one of those in the office. I mean, it's not, public shaming or anything like that. It's just a gentle suggestion, and, they comply without any problems whatsoever. I think that's, for me, that's really the big piece. There was something else I was going to add to that, but it'll come to me again, hopefully. But just, I think it makes sense to just continue with the way that we're going, just because I think if we open it up, it mixes that signal again. And I just don't see it being worthwhile. Oh, the other part I was going to say was also, if it becomes like recommended, I could see like, where everything else has been recommended by the CDC, if this becomes like out of it changes from the special considerations to recommended, then, I could see us going in that direction.
Okay, Ben? You're still muted, Ben.
I agree with Marco. No, there's a lot of middle school families who've been asking about Gators because, for our age group, they are easy to wear. Some of us feel like they breathe easier than some of these heavier masks, but it's opening a can of worms and it could cause an issue. And it's almost like we're going to relax the most important rule that we have is mask wearing. And I don't want to come across that way. I think it's important to keep going where we're going.
Yeah. You know why they breathe easier? The only one layer.
True. Jamie?
Yeah, I agree with everything else. At first I was thinking, why not let them wear them I would worry about knowing if it was 1 or 2 layers, but like people have said, we're not checking their face masks. But like Jeremy said, I think the Gators have been around forever and the odds of them having 1 layer would be much higher than 1 layer mask. So I think, yeah, stay the course, makes sense at this point. The masks aren't a huge problem like we maybe expected they would be this summer, and we're doing okay with it. So, yep.
Okay, Kath?
I think if we still are going to have conversations. Parents are going to still call. I've been getting, I think, 2 or 3 phone calls a month on Gators. I think that if it's under special considerations, then we can use it as a special consideration for special populations. So if Nancy feels like her population, or we have an asthma student that really struggles with another type of mask or something, we can use that under special considerations in our special populations. And I think that would be appropriate. But in terms of opening it for the masses, I think at this point, no. I think for kids who are struggling with masks, or if there's anything that we can do to have some kind of face coverings at this point, I say we allow that as an option. It would be my gut.
Okay. Norma Jean?
I've never tried a Gator, so I wouldn't be able to relate to that, but I think we're doing a great job the way it is. So leave it the way it is.
Jim?
Yeah, I'm in favor of keeping it the way it is. Just looking at it from an athletic standpoint, we just got kids used to using masks, and I think trying to monitor the Gators would be a challenge. So I'm in favor of keeping the mask.
Okay, Heather?
Yeah, I've never used one either, so I'm kind of with everybody else with keeping things the way they are.
Okay. Jody?
So I actually prefer Gators as well, but I think that the tracking and policing of it is going to open a can of worms. So I would agree with saying with masks.
Okay. Jeremy, did you have anything else?
No, I guess my only concern would be if we offer to special populations, and I think we should. I mean, that makes sense to, for kids who need that kind of consideration. How do we make clear that it's only for those kids and not for all kids, where it's such a visible and obvious accommodation?
Yeah. I don't, and we've been doing, honestly, that's been one of those things that we've had to kind of do all along, specifically in those special programming. So that wouldn't change. We've actually, there have been some students that have had to start with a shield and move to a mask. We've had, actually, and I want to turn it over to Nancy too. But we've actually had to write plans for increased mask time as well. And it to get students into masks. So I think it's worked well. Nancy?
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly, I think that relaxing that rule would violate probably like the number one thing you want to do in special ed, which is be consistent in your messaging and have models all around you of what the expectation is. And even if we have one student wearing a gaiter because of they don't want to wear a mask or whatever, I think it now changes people's adherence to what they've already been doing. I just think it would be a bad idea all the way around for special needs kids. But it's case by case. If it were an option for that one kid for whatever reason, I'd entertain it. But I think by and large, would not be a great idea.
And I would agree with all of that. I think for listening to all of you and thinking about it, honestly, we haven't had a ton of fights about masks. I mean, let's be real. I hear horror stories from other superintendents to some degrees about the fights with masks, and we just haven't had them. Have we had a couple? Sure, we do occasionally, but by and large, I think it's become acceptable. And I will say it was interesting. Kathy and I were on, was it last week, WMSA, Kathy, when Dan Schutte, was that last week or the week before? Oh God, the days are running together. And Dan Schutte, who's the Deputy Commissioner of Education, basically said we should expect to come back in the fall still wearing masks. I mean, he didn't outwardly say it, but he said it without saying it. I think, would you agree with that, Kathy?
I think he outwardly said it.
Yeah, I guess he did outwardly say it. He did say that there is a lot of talk about relaxing the distancing things, which would be really good for our purposes. But as far as to be prepared to come back in the fall wearing masks, I think because of that, I would recommend we just continue staying the course. I just don't think we change everything right now. We haven't had a lot of fights. It's not, I don't want to open that can of worms for all of us and frankly for our staff. I mean, they're not having to fight on a daily basis about masks for the most part. We don't want to start that process for sure. So, all right, seems good to me. All right, I want to go to testing. So the Department of Ed put out a nice news bulletin that it had purchased, I don't know, 250,000, 500,000 rapid tests to deploy to schools, and schools would have the opportunity to opt in. I will tell you, I'm not going to share my opinion first. I have some pretty strong opinions about this, some super strong opinions. But this is an interesting phenomena that we are going to see more and more of, I think. So basically what it would mean was our nurses would have the ability to give a test and get results of a test. But I'd like to hear from Jody to start with. Jody is our medical professional, and hear what her thoughts are on this topic.
So we've been kicking the idea around for a while. It's been on the listserv, and the DOE and the consultant, they've been talking about it. And there are schools that have opted into the program. As far as the nurses in our district, we have some fairly strong reservations towards testing. Some of the concerns we have would be that sick students would come to school so that they could get tested. The tests that were purchased by the DOE are recommended for symptomatic. They're most accurate if the person is symptomatic when they're tested. There is an off-label use of testing asymptomatic people, but they aren't as accurate. So our concern is that sick people would come to school so that we could test them to rule out the fact that they have COVID. Another issue or concern that we have with testing in school is that the sick student comes to school, we test them, they're negative, and then they never see another medical provider to actually have diagnosed what's wrong with them. We've seen a pretty significant increase in strep this year. And a lot of times the kids are coming down with sore throats, and often it's because they have strep, not because they have COVID. But that's not something that we are testing for. And would they see a provider to receive that medical care that they need? So we're concerned about that. Some of the other concerns we have to do with liability. So we test a student and we get a false positive, and then we put that student out of school for 10 days, needlessly. They didn't need to be out of school and aren't evaluated by another medical professional or a doctor. And then, or we get a false negative and we put a positive student back in the classroom. So we're, pretty concerned about that. Not to mention kind of the logistics of all of it too. We would have to apply for a CLIA waiver to be able to have the testing in the school, and then of course obtain the testing and the supplies to do that. So those are our major concerns.
Okay. Who else has thoughts on this topic? No? Nobody?
So if there's anybody that believes and would support testing, let's let them speak.
Yeah.
Because I think Jody has made the case in the opposite direction. And if there's nobody that really wants to support it, then we can move on.
Perfect. I like it. Anybody? Well, that seems pretty unanimous to me. So, all right, good. We don't need to go any further. I'm happy with the outcome of that conversation, if I'm being honest. So, all right, thank you all. The last thing on our agenda today was, I put it on the agenda as Wednesdays / pre-K 8 opening more. Basically, what I want to talk about is how can we open up more instructional time? And Bob had asked to put this on the agenda, and I had Wednesdays on there already. So, we're going to start, and I'll be quite honest, there's going to start being some pressure from outside to start opening more, specifically probably at the pre-K 5 level more than anything else. If you watch the news, school districts around us are starting to talk about adding Wednesdays that are on a similar cohort schedule to us. They're starting talking about adding more time for K-1-2. I guess, and I will say this, one of our biggest barrier to not, to opening full time or being full is space. Space is our barrier. We can do masks, our ventilation is good, we've got purifiers, we've got all that kind of stuff. But our biggest barrier in two different places is in the classroom and on our buses. So Kathy, I don't know if you want to share, we had been talking about Wednesdays. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think, and I know you said a pre-K 8, but I do think we need to have a conversation of like, what's our capacity as a full district,
Right.
Not a limit. That way, I think it's important as this team that we discuss options for everybody.
Yep.
So, in terms of what have other districts have done. So I will say the US Department has sent us a lovely Biden, please open schools. And in this plan, I think it says 100 times that it's still a 6 foot. We still have to follow the main CDC guidelines, which allows us to do 3 feet within between students. The Biden plan does not talk about that. It talks still about 6 feet. His reopening plan is to get schools that have been completely fully remote into at least 1 day. So I just want to make sure, again, this is where that misinformation and a lot of information is coming through. I read the entire, I don't know how many pages. It's like
24, if you don't count the appendix and the
Yep.
references.
Yep.
I have it on my desktop.
Yeah, so I went through it as well and tried to like look at what are the changes or updates that he's suggesting that we're not following. And I didn't really, there was nothing glaring that said, wow, if we do this, we can reopen. But my biggest concern reading that was 6 foot, 6 foot, 6 foot. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. So around town, right, around our area, people are taking those Wednesdays and doing, and some have already done this. Like RSU 16 has been doing this since before Thanksgiving. They've been rotating our Wednesdays. So cohort A on one week would be on Wednesday. The following week it would be cohort B. Some districts have been doing 3 days, 2 days, and Andy can attest to that being a parent doing 2 day, 3 days. Some are just increasing. So most of us shortened the day. Some are just going back to a regular school day. And so you're increasing. So each cohort gets that extra 2 hours versus increasing a day. So there's many options. I think that this team, as I kind of alluded to Andy this morning, is this team has some options to discuss. If we're looking at increasing instructional time, then we have some options. If we were to institute this as of this Wednesday, not that that's happening, I'm just trying to give an example. Each cohort A and cohort B would increase 7 school days from now till June. So I just wanted to let you know, like, what does that actually look like in terms of
And
time?
we also have to remember too, that whatever we do will be a recommendation to the board. So the board, if the board has voted on our opening plan, our hybrid model, right? And Bob, maybe I'm incorrect here, but I think if we want to make adjustments to that plan, I think it needs to go back to the board as a recommendation from this team. So if we want to, look at opening up on Wednesdays, every other cohort on Wednesdays and maybe lengthening our day, I do think that needs to go back to the board. Would you agree, Bob?
Yeah, I would agree. It certainly was an educational policy decision on what we were going to do with the cohorts. It came to the school board in August to approve our reopening plan, because you may know that we were completely closed prior to this. So the plan came to the board approved it, and the administration implemented it. I think it's interesting, since we do have the ability to welcome back into in-person classes all of those who are full-time remote, if they choose to join one of the cohorts. I mean, that's what has been mentioned at these meetings before. I believe that if we've shortened the class days, how much? An hour and a half?
It's about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the grade span.
Yeah.
All right.
So it would be averaging about 22 hours. If we went back to the full day, we would be averaging about 22 hours per cohort.
Right. So that'd be an extra 22 hours of instruction. And if they got 7 days, if we were to put in the Wednesdays, which I think it becomes more of a scheduling nightmare for parents who for the last 6 months have scheduled Wednesdays, the students are home. Now it's going to be every other week they're home. I think that we can offer more in-person instruction by moving the end of the day back, and then making those adjustments to support for remote learners, to basically have that during our lower grades teachers don't really have free time during the day to speak of much to talk, but you'll still have Wednesdays to provide that, and then the cohorts will be able to get their support during their regular classes on their normal days. I think that might be a more viable option than to go into Wednesdays. I mean, it doesn't do us a great favor that our neighboring school system, Lisbon, believes that they can get all their students back full time, 5 days a week. And we've had somebody at the last board meeting went and talked about how they, I think they work in Lisbon, and that the students are sitting right next to each other. They're really not maintaining the social distancing. And I just don't want us to get into that type of situation.
Well, and I think
it allows us also, we don't need to running all the transportation on Wednesday, so it helps us a little offset there to get more cleaning done. Otherwise, we got people in the classes, so our deep cleaning on Wednesdays go away because classrooms are filled.
Yep. Well, and I will speak to one of the reasons. So I will speak to the whole alternating day thing. So currently my own children, 1 week go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the next week go Tuesday, Thursday. As a parent, it is an absolute nightmare to try to figure out, and I'm lucky to some degree because I got, almost 15, almost 13, almost 12, and 8. And luckily they can be home together. But I can't imagine if I had 8 and 7 and 5, and trying to, plan for that. How do you do that? Finding daycare. It's really, really difficult, those alternating those days. I wasn't in favor. Kathy and I talked about this when we first started down this road, that whatever we had to be consistent for our parents so they could plan. Certainly. So, I can speak to that thing. But I'd like Jamie was first and then Marco.
I just was going to say, I guess I agree with maybe both you and Bob, but taking both away right now, I'm not sure how, extending the days and going back on Wednesday, the amount of parent communication was pretty steep before COVID came along, but the amount of parent communication and work that teachers have to do in this setting is unbelievable. So if we don't have any time for that, for the kids that are still at least 2 days a week, 3 on some weeks, in a hybrid setting, I don't know how they do it. I don't know, there'd have to be some sort of offset for that, I would assume. That is the part that, and that, sounds like it's about the staff, but it's got a direct impact on the kids. So that's my biggest concern. I think one or the other would be doable with hopefully maybe a week or two warning, Kathy, not this Wednesday, but
just trying to make it even for numbers wise, that's all.
Yeah.
Got it. It's always about the math, right? But yeah, that's my 2 cents. I think we can accommodate one of those, but both seems like I don't know, it seems like we've been doing okay, and that might really put a dent in some of that. The amount of communication is crazy right now in this setting. So, yep.
Okay. Marco?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to what Jamie just mentioned. We have office hours at this point in time for remote students at the end of the day, about a half an hour or so set aside for them to do so. And if we do go back to a 2 o'clock schedule, that would change how we do that. I just would have to play with the numbers of minutes within the schedule itself to see what we could add back in. Maybe we could still do office hours and add, I don't know, 10 minutes or so to each class period. So it's not, about an hour, but maybe, an hour and 10 minutes or something along those lines. I just would want to be conscious of, like, again, what Jamie's saying, the time that's needed to connect with students who are not in person, do communication, make sure that, all the other aspects of, planning and preparation are covered before hitting the green light on it. I do like adding an hour to the day better than I do Wednesdays being offered back in the mix.
Kathy?
So I get 2 things. One, I do think it's not just about adding time, it's about also what have we used that time for. So thinking about all the things that we've put into Wednesdays that we would be losing, between that SEL component for some staff, that's the only time that they get their planning time. Sorry, I was thinking like personal time, but their planning time, our professional development, all of those things. And we have our RTI groups. I know for like our title folks, we have kids that are like stacked all the way through those days. So we would have to think about how would we get those other things in place for there. The other thing is I think are starting to get some leverage on getting the synchronous learning, and to think about maybe that's the time where we really need to make sure that we're advertising, as you guys are kind of talking about that communication, that we are not just having, hopefully in the 6-12 world, we're getting to a point where it's not just like in person and remote days. And my remote days, I am not doing those connections, that I'm actually getting synchronous in-person instructional time. We're increasing that, doesn't matter where you are. And so I think that needs to be part of that story, is if we're not increasing in-person time, we are increasing instructional time. And so I think that's really important, that we need to share that, I guess.
Okay. Jeremy?
Yeah, so just a couple of things I was thinking about in regards to this, and part of it deals with a conversation I had with a parent this week. Certainly a lot of confusion with the CDC announcements and not understanding that means been doing this stuff already.
Right.
And thinking that this was going to mean a big change for us. Also, he was relieved to know that we were also now offering synchronous classes for students as well. He didn't know that his daughter had been attending basically every day of the week in some capacity. I was pleased to know that, which was kind of nice to tell him.
Yeah.
I'd be curious the impact on cohort D students. I know we can bring them back to the school if they wanted to come. But if we limit office hours at the end of the day and get rid of Wednesdays, those students have been my toughest so far to get to come to some of those synchronous classes. The other concern I would have too, from a parent standpoint, and luckily this doesn't concern me this year, my wife's able to work remotely and my daughter stays at home. If it's not done in a coordinated effort with enough leeway or lead time, do we have teachers who have become their child's daycare on Wednesday because they're able to be home with them, and now would have to miss Wednesdays, and what strain that would put on the school department?
Yeah, I share that concern too, Jeremy, about Wednesdays. Wednesdays, one of the reasons that a couple of different things. We had talked about Wednesdays originally was part of that, but also that's one of the reasons why I said we could work from home on Wednesdays, to try to alleviate some of those stressors too, because I know those are stressful for sure. I do think, Kathy brings up a good point, and so do you, Jeremy, about synchronous learning. I mean, I think 6 through 12, it packaged, that needs to be part of the story. The other thing is, I think 6 through 12 with synchronous learning, and I've been saying, I mean, I know Marco, Ben, Kathy, Jamie, Nancy, you guys have heard me say, Norma Jean, say this over and over again. The technology that we finally put in changes the game for us, especially right now, because we can go fully synchronous, and the only thing cohorts need to be for is your in-person days, and that's it. And so, like, for instance, my oldest child today is not an in-person day. They are a cohort B student, but they are in class all day long. I mean, all day long from the word go. Now that's very different in a pre-K 5 situation. No question about it. It's very different. We can't ask our pre-K 5 friends to do that, which is one of the reasons why we had dedicated, we ended up doing dedicated remote teachers like Heather. And so, but at the 6 through 12 level, with the technology we now have, I don't see why, and the technology, and I say this all the time, if I can use it, anybody can use it. I mean, I'm not using it today, but normally I do. I have it in my office, and we've done some PD. I think that changes the game for us with regards to how we talk about instruction in general right now, and to dispel the myth, especially 6 through 12, that we're not working all the time. Because we know that's not true. But I think when we start, talking about the fact that on cohort A days, doesn't matter if you're in cohort B, you're in class the whole time. And we have the capacity to do that. And I see no reason why we can't do that moving forward. I am not, I will tell you this is just me, and I want to hear from other people. I'm not super on board with adding Wednesdays for the reasons that Bob talked about, Jeremy talked about, but I am in favor of extending the Monday, Tuesday, the days, the actual in-person instruction days. I would like to figure out how we can get there, for sure. Jeremy?
And I think for me, I have no concerns with that as long as we can get, especially D students, to attend synchronously.
Yep.
I mean, the fact that, semester one, first half of the year, I didn't see them at all in any capacity. I'm starting to see some of them a little bit, but largely they're not on a schedule at all that matches ours. And my only time to meet with them, my only possibility to meet with them is during those office hours. So if the expectation on those can change, I think it's completely feasible to extend the school day that way.
Yeah. Ben?
So at the middle school, this is our first day of synchronous learning with the cohort D kids, and our attendance has never been better. I know this is day one, but it's been great. Our teachers have been using it for office hours now for the last 2 weeks, which has been phenomenal. So we have a lot of practice with it. There is no reason why we couldn't move to synchronous teaching anytime soon. After teachers get used to using the equipment, give it a couple of weeks. I wouldn't mind seeing, a similar version of all cohorts back together on Wednesdays, not physically in the building, but 6-12 doing remote learning synchronously on Wednesday to increase some time. I think we can get those 7 days back along with the 22 hours by doing that.
Yeah. All right. Who else? Marco?
Oh, I think I weighed in, Andy.
No, you did.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I think, Kathy's point kind of alleviates some of my concern about office hours.
Yeah.
Just wasn't thinking necessarily about the synchronous learning opportunity. And I think it just comes down to, again, engaging the cohort D kiddos, which has been difficult for the high school.
Middle school too.
Yeah.
So can so with the synchronous opportunity, do we require the synchronous opportunity? So do we require those in cohort A, let's say go Monday and Tuesday in person, do we require on Thursday and Friday that they attend classes online during the day? And is it a new instruction on Thursday and Friday than it was on Monday and Tuesday? If that's the case, then, I was never really in support of necessarily bringing them back on Wednesday. I just know there's going to be more and more pressure being built from people who still believe this is all just a made up scenario that we're living through.
Yeah.
I attended the Androscoggin County Commissioners meeting last Wednesday.
Ooh,
online.
that must have been fun.
Boy, if you missed it, you missed a zoo. It was something else. But that being said, then we should have our cohort D students attending synchronously as well, so that they are not getting separate instruction. They're just remote 4 days a week, and Wednesday would be office hours for all 3 cohorts to go and get the one-on-one support that they might need outside of. And I would think that if we have the synchronous in place and we're doing that, and if we're recording the classes, if we can, as much as we can, so the student can maybe look at it later in the evening or on the weekends if they have a problem with one of their problems or with a lecture, then there's no need to extend the day, because that would still offer that support each day for students who might find it a little difficult during the synchronous learning to go and interrupt the class for a question remotely. It's a little bit different than when you're in class and you raise your hand. So I think, the technology is allowing us this opportunity for those who need the in-person. It works better. We can get them in there twice a week, which is great. And they can move along, and we can get a little more in-depth instruction going on than what we were doing before, where we were teaching the same thing on Monday and Tuesday to one cohort, and then on Thursday and Friday to the other cohort. And we were only, basically cutting instruction ability in half.
Jeremy?
I was just gonna say, so I'm teaching currently 2 AP courses, and I advance the curriculum every day. So there's not a repeat instruction Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday. It's a little bit different with English 4. There's some repetition, but not so much so that it's repeated entirely over again. And certainly with the camera setup, we're able to do that with all of them. I do have students who, with the camera, being remote, interact with the class. They'll ask questions. They'll show me a thumbs up or come on screen and actually ask a verbal question, or use the chat if it's spotty connection, and we do it that way. So there is the ability, I think, to have in a sense real class with them involved with the system. It takes them a little bit of finagling, takes a little bit of learning what settings you need on your laptop, but it's been a good process so far for those that have been involved, I think.
Okay. Heather, did you want to add anything?
Not yet. I'm just trying to figure out where we're going with everything, kind of processing it all.
Well,
I mean, I think that's the biggest difference right here is this conversation. 6 through 12 is synchronous.
Right.
But the cohort D has specific teachers. So that office hour for pre-K 5 is really used for those kids that are in cohort A on their remote days. So they're not the cohort D. So it's very different in pre-K 5 world than it is 6-12.
Right.
And so, I think that's where the conversation was, are we adding in-person days for pre-K 5? Or originally was pre-K 8 on the agenda. And I just wanted to say that there's a difference between what we can provide for amount of increasing instructional time. We can do 6 through 12 by doing synchronous learning all the time. But in pre-K 5, that is not the case in terms of the synchronous because of daycares and abilities and attention spans and supports. But the office hours look different because there are cohort D teachers specific for them. So they're really only reaching out. And plus it's only a 45-minute piece. It's not necessarily a full hour. So I just wanted to say that I kind of blended the conversation, and maybe that's why Heather's kind of like trying to figure it all out. It looks different in pre-K 5 than it does in 6-12. But again, I think this is where whatever we decide and how we advertise and making it about it, there is a difference in how we are tackling that instructional time for our students.
That's exactly what was going through my head.
I was wondering, yeah.
I can see it. I know you, Heather.
the problem that we run into, and I don't want to speak for Glenn, but I will speak for Glenn to some degree. The problem that we run into is if we decide to extend the day, go back to that and we can do one of two things from my perspective. If we decide to extend the 6 through 12 day, the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday in-person time, it has a direct impact on pre-K 5 because we have to extend the day pre-K 5 because of the bus runs. So if you really think about it, right now we're running buses at 1 o'clock for the secondary run and 2 o'clock for the elementary run. If we extend the 6 through 12 day on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we have no choice but to then extend pre-K 5. However, we could extend the pre-K 5 day and not touch the 6 through 12 day with regards to busing infrastructure. Am I correct in that, Glenn, in my thought process?
Yep, we could certainly do that. It would be more feasible to extend the elementary run versus just doing the 6 through 12 and running into the issue of the elementary runs. The other token to this is, if we do for K-5 and some of those D students want to come back, currently our buses are full to the point where you have one student per seat. Per the CDC, we're allowing siblings to sit together, so everything is set up that way. if we continue to add to the buses, we're gonna run into a situation where we're not gonna have siblings sitting beside one another. And also you're gonna have a student, the aisleways are a little over a foot. You know, they're like 13.5 inches, maybe 14, depending on how you hold the tape. So that certainly isn't the 3 feet. So, you know, you're gonna have two students sitting aisle to aisle with that aspect. So just something to keep in the back of the mind as well as we move forward towards, you know, bringing more students back. How do we, depending on what the guidelines are too as well, but my concern would be the D, depending on how many more want to come back, because we are extending the days so they can get that in-person instruction. How is that going to look on the buses?
I really, honestly, at this point, all the Ds that want to come back have come back.
Yeah.
And we, you know, especially, I think we had pockets of time. You know, the worry was originally the beginning of school, then it was holidays. After the new year, we've kind of gotten ours. The administration has done a really good job of figuring out those at-risk kids and getting the ones that need to come back. I don't see, honestly, a whole lot of Ds coming back just to come back at this point, because it's been so long.
I would agree, and I think this is my belief, just from, you know, all the survey work we did, all the conversations I've had with parents at this point in time, other than say a handful, almost all of our cohort D students are there because they are worried about in-person instruction. And that just from what I know. And so because of that, I don't believe increasing in-person instruction will have an impact on kids coming back. I do think if we were to and I'll be quite candid, you know, Jamie and I talked about this weekend, space is just a nightmare. It just is, trying to shove desks in rooms, and how do you do lunch shifts? I can't, I agree with Bob. I can't wrap my head around how Lisbon is doing it. It's not our school district, and we don't have to do things the way that they do things. But I just, looking at our classroom sizes, the number of teachers we had, I had a conversation with with Pat Hopkins this morning, and she's talking about bringing back in pre-K2 full time, but they're having to hire like 5 or 6 more teachers, and they have empty building space across their district. We don't really have those things. And trying to, you know, hire 5 new teachers, I mean, I just can't fathom it. And so we don't have to do that. But I also think that if we were to open full time tomorrow, I think we'd have even more. I think cohort D would grow, not shrink. I don't know how anybody else feels about that. Ben?
There are a lot of families in our community that are having a difficult time understanding COVID. And, you know, those cohort D kids are home now for a purpose. You know, the ones we could get back, we've gotten back. I'm not sure the community would appreciate having class sizes of 20, knowing that there's only going to be 2 or 3 feet between each student. I don't see that going over well.
No, and like,
I would say on Friday, there was a huge amount of people that thought, and I think Jeremy alluded to this with that one father, was when they saw the green, they thought we were going to be back in full in person. So I think just as much as you have some that are cautious, you have some that are like, we got the green light, everyone's back in.
Right. Well, and I will say the advisory system, I really struggle with that because it's morphed so much. Marco?
Yeah, I was just curious, help me understand. So like we could extend the elementary school day, but not the middle school, high school day.
Well, if you extend the elementary school day, right? So if you extend pre-K5, it has no direct impact on what you do middle school, high school with regards to bus run.
Right.
Whereas if you extend middle school, high school, then it has a direct impact on what you do elementary school.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. So I don't know, you know, I guess my question is, are we satisfied staying, or are we happy staying right where we are? And knowing that there is a political component to this as well, as much as I don't like it, there is. Or do we want to look at extending our days on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, whether it be all of both elementary and secondary, or just elementary, because we have synchronous learning at 6 through 12. I guess that's where I'm at. And do we want to talk about Wednesdays? I'm not feeling like there's a lot of support for us coming in on Wednesdays at this point, but I'd open. So let's start there. Where are we with opening up on Wednesdays, Jeremy?
So with Wednesdays, I would say keep things as they are. I think expectation-wise for parents, it's what they're used to. It's what's working, by and large, as far as I'm aware. And again, unless every district around us also opens on Wednesdays, it's going to be difficult for a lot of the teachers to do that.
Okay, Bob?
Yeah, I think the Wednesdays ought to be taken off the table right now.
Okay, Kathy?
I don't think we have the capacity to increase Wednesdays.
Okay, Ben?
Multiple reasons.
Wednesdays.
Okay, Jim?
I'd say keep Wednesdays the way they are right now.
Okay, Marco's on the bat phone. Jody?
I would agree with leaving Wednesdays alone.
Okay, Glenn?
Yeah, I'd agree. Leave Wednesdays alone.
Okay, Nancy?
I would leave Wednesdays alone. I also just want to throw out another group of kids that I feel like we haven't sort of addressed, who are not cohort D, but are special ed and cohort A or B, who really need to be coming 4 days a week. And I think as administrators, our building administrators have done a great job trying to filter those out in the kids who really, really, really need it. But I have a lot more kids who really need it. So I'm not sure, I don't know if synchronous 3-5 at some point is something we can talk about, but they just need to be not working remotely from home, not connected to a class. So that's just another thing. But in terms of Wednesdays, I'm all for just leaving it alone.
Well, and I think, just to your point, Nancy, I think we can take those on an individual basis, those kids still. I think we can. So, but as far as Wednesdays, you're in agreement.
Yeah.
Take Wednesday off the table. Jamie?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of reasons why that wouldn't be the best decision right now. And Nancy, I will say we have offered C to several 3-5 students in special ed who have turned it down, whether it's they don't want their kid wearing masks 4 days a week, 2 is a big enough fight, or something else along the lines of they don't want them mixed in another cohort. So
yeah, and I agree. That's what I mean. You guys have been great about that. But I think there's another group of kids whose parents are not, who could benefit from that, who teams have not had opportunities, whether it not be an annual or whatever reason, to bring it up. And we've just sort of been going along with it, but who really aren't doing that well in A and B.
okay.
Okay, so I think you guys can look at that for sure.
Yeah.
Heather?
Yeah, I'm on board with leaving Wednesdays alone.
Okay, Norma Jean?
Same, leaving Wednesdays alone.
Okay, well, that's unanimous. Let's take Wednesdays off the table then. All right, so next part of that conversation is extending, going back to the regular school day, I guess my question is, do we go both, do we go K to 12 or do we just do K5? And I think that's what we've got to talk about. So I'd love to, Norma Jean, do you have your hand up?
I do.
No, I do.
Heather did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm just wondering, has it been decided that the high school, I know the middle school is synchronous as of today. Is the high school synchronous as well?
We're working on it.
Yeah.
So if we extend pre-K 5 with the idea that the middle school and the high school could be ideally synchronous, would we be doing this pretty much the same across the board for all students in a way, by providing some extra support across the board for all
Yes,
students?
we would. Yep, we would, for sure. Yep. Norma Jean?
I just had a quick question, just thinking more, maybe Jim or Marco can chime in, but that the hour that the kids have to wait or come back for extracurricular sports, that would resolve that issue, perhaps. Just thinking about that for the 6-12.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, Regina. That is an obstacle with kids having to go home and come back for either a bus to a game or a practice. So that extending the day definitely would help that issue.
Okay, Ben.
I can tell you at the middle school, we have office hours, but I'm not sure how well received they are. A lot of teachers complain about, I invited this kid, but they don't show up kind of thing. And, I just don't think it's being utilized the way it was intended originally. And that this would be more productive to have the kids either synchronously or in the building receive extended time with content.
But if you're moving to synchronous, why would you need office hours? If the expectation is all the cohorts are going to be synchronous, then your office hours really could be, we should be looking at maybe how are we going to adjust Wednesday to ensure that teachers have time to connect to the ones that are not coming to synchronous or what have you. But I guess that's a question for Marco and Jeremy, like at the high school, like why would you need and it's no different than any other year where you have a full day. If kids are not passing in work or not doing all of that, you didn't have an office hour during that time. If we're now synchronous, I guess.
Yeah, he's not suggesting that, Kathy.
Oh, Kathy, says it doesn't work. The office hours isn't working at all. It's
right.
horrible.
But I'm saying I'm trying to do the argument that to not get rid of it, I guess so what would be the point of, what would be the argument to not get rid of it?
There isn't. I don't think he was trying to make one.
No.
Yeah, I think the only argument that really is there is like, the access for cohort D students. I mean, because they wouldn't be synchronous. I mean, that's the only piece that's there.
It's best for kids to have them in contact longer. We just need to be able to get to that point. That's all.
And what I heard you saying, Ben, was with the ability to go synchronous, you don't need the office hours anymore.
That's what
that's what I'm hearing. And Marco, are you saying the same thing? Jeremy, would you agree with that?
In large part, I think educationally so. Right now, the issue, though, would also be that we're looking to do attendance in a number of different ways for kids who are on their remote day. And that does take some time depending on how you're doing that in your classroom. So, you would still need time at the end of the day. And since other things also come up, and having attendance is so important. I don't know. Get rid of all of it.
Sorry, Jeremy. You could probably reconcile that. I mean, the day doesn't end until 2:30. I mean, the school day obviously ends.
And certainly, I realize that. I just, I'm realizing I also need to talk to other teachers and check into the office and do a number of other things as well. So while there's a half an hour there, it's an awfully short one, depending on how kids have tried to check in or not.
Well, and I think with attendance purposes, I mean, if we're fully synchronous and attendance, we go back to doing attendance the way we always did.
That would be great,
right? I mean,
that would be wonderful if that's something we'd want to do.
Yeah, right. It's just I always come back to that being a messaging piece, right? Like right now, we're not saying that it's mandatory that you show up on your remote days to do classes. So that would be a change.
Right. The other piece with that, and this is messaging again, we have a lot of students who are working a full day almost on the remote days, and other students who are, when they're here, are going to school, are going to work for 1:15 or 1:30. So you're going to see kids, leave school early or want to leave school early to go to work, or even have increased absences with changing. I think we should change it. I don't think kids should be working during school hours anyways.
And legally they can't. Even right? I mean, that drives me insane. So
you have kids going in at like 10 a.m. shifts. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and businesses should get fined for that, but that's neither here nor there. I will leave that one alone. All right, Bob.
I don't think that our regular instructional day has been long enough for years. So I wasn't a real fan of shortening it to start with, but I agreed that there was some benefit to be had to go and provide support for those who weren't going to be in class by having the office hours at the end of the day. But, you know, and I guess I'm one of those who, if the student passes the assessments that we give them on whether they learn the subject matter, I really don't care how many minutes they spend sitting in the seat. Our job is to impart knowledge. It's not to take their time up. So, you know, to worry about how long it's going to take attendance, you kind of get whether they're attending on it, whether they pass. And if they don't attend and they don't pass, then they get to do it again.
Yeah.
You know, I've had to do that a couple of times in my high school career. So, you know, it gets the point across eventually.
It does.
So I think extending the school back to the regular day, pre-K to 12, if that works, if that's, if there's still reservations about the whole school system, then certainly the elementary, where I think it pays off even more to have the younger ones in school a little bit longer, and probably provides more relief for parents, and it's easier to get around daycare. High school, you don't have to, you know, they're kind of taking care of themselves, and they may support daycare for the younger ones. So as long as they aren't coming home after the little ones too much, so that they can provide that monitoring of their siblings after hours, then I think that works out well.
I'd like to hear from Heather and Jamie and Ben about extending the pre-K 5 day.
Well, that's what I was gonna just bring up was, the only thing I'm thinking about is, so the office hours now in place for teachers for like students in cohort A when they're home and vice versa. If we were to extend the day, I guess I would kind of hope that something was built into the Wednesday schedule as an expectation for teachers to reach out to those students, and the students knew that like Wednesdays are now going to become, or part of the day Wednesday, as your chance to check in and ask questions. And I think it would have to be made really clear to teachers, like that this time of block of your day or whatnot is for that.
And I think I agree with you. I think we have to leverage Wednesdays a little differently, but I think you're right. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, and I guess that's just that's my biggest concern for teachers is, will there be enough time? And, you know, being remote, I'm not in that scenario, but will there be enough time for them to adequately support and communicate with their students on the days that they're not in school?
Jamie, Ben?
I think it'd be easy to communicate with staff and with families about Wednesdays being a support day. I think we do that already.
Yeah.
As far as office hours goes, and we can just raise expectations. If we talk and work through our TI scenarios for students at the primary school, you know, I think having the students, you know, the students who can participate when they're at home, because we know that some students can't participate because daycare issues or you know, parents are working. We know that's an issue pre-K2, probably pre-K 5. But you know, that support is easy enough to have there. Plus, teachers could use Wednesdays to do the communication, whether classes, with the families.
Jamie?
Yeah, we've got blocks of time already built in for office hours on Wednesday. So again, kind of fine tuning that and kind of reviewing that SOP or whatever would be helpful for sure. But I don't think that would change much on Wednesdays. Oh, there's something else I had in my head, but nope, it's gone.
Okay. All right. Anybody else about extending the day? So what I'd like to do is, Ben, yay or nay on extending the day back to our regular hours?
I'm a yay.
Both for both 6K to 12?
Yes.
Okay. Kathy? Bob? Okay. Jim?
Yes, K to 12. Yep.
Okay. Marco?
Yep, I agree.
Jody? Okay. Jeremy?
if synchronous can work, I think pre-K 5 works. Sorry, pre-K 12 works all the way. I've done my reservations about making it synchronous for high school.
Okay. All
High
right.
school has always been the toughest nut to crack with new technology.
Glenn? Okay. Nancy?
Yep, I agree.
Jamie?
Yes, I agree.
Heather?
Yeah.
Okay. Norma Jean? Oh, she may be on the phone. Well, and I 100% agree. So then the question becomes, we need to take this to the board. Bob, are we comfortable adding, I mean, we put CPT updates on the agenda for Wednesday. Are we comfortable creating an action item to have the board vote to do this? And when do we want this to start?
So I think what I would recommend is that we bring it up under the brief of the CPT meeting. Let the board know that the recommendation is that we extend the day. Then we would like the board to think about it, and it would be a action item the following week. That gives the board members time to think about it, the public maybe to weigh in. The typical CPT board, or as the CDC guidance says, the board that makes these decisions should have a lot of public input, parents and students and others, and we don't have that in this particular group. So I think it would allow the community to provide some feedback before the decision's made. It would also allow time, let's say if the board was to act, well, that's 2 weeks. We don't meet every week, do we?
Right. It would be a 2-week unless we scheduled a special meeting.
I wouldn't want to do a special meeting.
I don't either. Yeah.
So I guess that's what it would be 2 weeks, and then we'd be looking if it was approved to implement it the following Monday.
Okay.
Because that gives people basically 2.5 weeks notice that it's going to happen. Because if we talk about it and we get a sense it's going to be approved, people can be planning for it, and then they will know the following Thursday morning whether it's been approved by the board or not.
Okay, Jamie?
Question. One of the things that I'm not sure until I sit down and really look at the schedule closely, but it's been super easy to have ed techs help with those end of the day duties with the shorter day because it fits within their schedule. Last year we paid extra to some ed techs for Carrie Ricker to stay longer and cover bus duties and whatnot. So I don't remember without a contract or whatever in front of me, Andy, but what is the time needed for me to notify ed techs that their day might change by 10 or 15 minutes?
Let's talk about that afterwards. We could certainly do that where it's actually, there are 2 ways we can go with that, and actually you and I and Heather can talk about it. There's a couple of different ways we can do that. I'm not super concerned, but that's a good thing to talk about for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jeremy, did you have a question?
More just a comment on the messaging. I guess with Bob, what Bob's mentioning is, can we also put out the idea of synchronous classes occurring, and also that may be the attendance route in the future, so that the option goes away of the other ideas?
Well, I think the timeline that Bob laid out, I mean, I had originally thought, we really ought to do this soon, but I think the timeline that this lays out gives us the opportunity to get the messaging correct. Right. And so what that'll do is we'll put messaging together and then send it to all of you to take a look at ahead of time.
I'm just thinking if it can be a package deal for this sort of big switch, it might be understood better.
I think, and I agree with you. I think it all goes together. It is a package. Yes, Kathy.
I was just going to say, we are, unfortunately, this year are still going to have to be pretty flexible in attendance. And that is one of the highly recommended recommendations from the DOE about attendance, that it shouldn't just be a one thing. And part of that is just, it was part of the whole instructional plan and things that you needed to have multiple ways that kids could connect. So I would just be cautioned, although I do think it can be an easy one to do. And I think that's why we chose like an attendance question of the day, because it was like, you do that and then you're only having to cast a net for a few others. It can't be a hard fast, like you're either in or nothing. It's just part of that whole COVID piece that attendance is has to be a little bit more flexible as part of our plan. So I wanted to, and if we do make a change, that would have to go to the board as well, because that was part of that full package of what are our 3 options for attendance. That doesn't mean we can't stress, like, getting our attendance is going to be done this way, and, you know, that kind of thing. Like, this is our main way of doing it. I know pre-K 5 has changed, or pre-K 8, I guess, in some ways, did, you know, kind of stress a stronger attendance way of tracking at the very beginning, but it can't just be one way and that's it, because that's not what's been recommended.
Marco?
Yeah, I'm just, I guess I'm curious with that statement, Kathy, just, you know, are we gonna just end up back where we are currently because of that? I mean, if I don't have to show up for attendance purposes for my synchronous education courses, you know, what, I guess what's the recourse? You know, it's like, you know, they're back doing the same things that they've always done.
Well, I know, I'm just, I hear what you're saying. I think we just need to, like, first of all, get synchronous going and then look at it. But there has to be other options that kids can access their information through Google Classroom like before. During, I would say you need to have that transitional time that you're not going like hard, like Ben, hard date today was synchronous, and also our new attendance is you had to show up or not. You know, in our communication, there are still parents who are like, what? Attendance?
Yeah.
I mean, Jeremy had the father who the kid's been attending forever and had no idea that she's been attending. I think you can't make those the same. I think there has to be that transition, and it also has to do with your communication. Do I think we can get there? Yes. I just don't think it can be all done March 15th, if that's the date that Bob just alluded to. So I just don't think it can be all done in one fell swoop.
Well, I think it's going to take some time to get there. But again, I think it comes down to messaging and packaging. And I think we can get there. So.
And I would think on Wednesday, we would want to kind of get just kind of a consensus from the board to make sure there's not going to be a lot of resistance, because, you know, to go out and tell people and get the communications that we're going to move on March 15th to do this, and then have a jeopardy that the board not approve it, you know, on March 7th or whatever day that is not a good deal. So while I guess we could approve it for March 15th to give time for the messaging and everything to be put into place this coming Wednesday, maybe Andy, you and I might have to think about that over the next couple of days, and maybe come with a recommendation that the board go ahead and vote to approve it, and for that future date, so that we have time to get the message out and all the pieces put in place.
I agree with you. I actually think there's an urgency to having some interim time there. So let's think about that. Yeah. All right. Good. Wow. That was good stuff, everyone. Thank you, Jeremy.
Was I wrong about March 15th? I mean, I just understood, like Bob saying, having the conversation this board meeting, having a vote the following board meeting, and then the March 15th would get started. Was I right in that?
Yeah, you were.
Okay.
You were until I spoke again.
Yeah.
Okay.
And said that we might want to actually end up voting on it and approving it for a March 15th effective date.
Okay.
Right. To give the time in between.
Yeah, that allows you to get the communications out and know that it's going to actually happen, because the board will have already approved it.
Right.
Instead of trying to communicate it that it might happen.
Jeremy?
Yeah, so just one quick thing I wanted to bring up. In reading some of the guidance documents, one of the recommendations was added that students should not talk while on math breaks. And I was wondering if that has been communicated to faculty, because I know I haven't seen it.
I have not seen that either.
So it's in the most recent document under math breaks. It was like approved in December as an addition, and basically mentioned that they should basically be doing like a silent reading task or journaling while doing a math break and not talking.
So that's not necessarily an update. That's what was recommended before. So in the fall, they actually did not do any guidance on mass breaks. They actually removed mass breaks because they didn't want to give any guidance, because they wanted for you to not do mass breaks. And so it's not necessarily an update. It's just they resurrected what was there before, because it was always supposed to be during independent work And I think that's another struggle with us, like getting more kids in, is like snack time. They should not have snack time all at the same time.
Right.
So I think there's some opportunities for administrators to maybe remind that snack time needs to be staggered. Kids should not be talking during that time. It's just during independent reading or working. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily new guidance. It was just guidance that was finally put out there that was like deleted and then came back.
Okay, yeah, it's in the document. This is updated 12/11. So and
Yeah.
it wasn't in there before that I could see. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
and it
was
kind of
there in
applies,
July, and it went away.
yeah, it kind of applies during lunchtime too. So anytime they're unmasked,
Right.
they have to be 6 feet, and they talk about when people are talking that it can travel greater distances than that. So yeah, it kind of, the mask break and eating is to eat, not talk. The socializing has to take place when the masks are on, I guess.
Yeah, actually, there's been a lot of news articles about is school safe to reopen and such. And a big piece of that is lunchtime. And you are right, Bob. They are saying that ones that are having better luck with no talking during.
Well, and I got to tell you, we've done a fabulous job with lunchtime here. I mean, you guys have done just amazing, because I look at what my 7th grader does for lunch. They sit 4 to a table, unmasked. Yeah, it's a very interesting scenario. So we've really conquered the lunch thing here for sure. But certainly, I think there's some opportunity just for some good reminders. So, yep. All right. Yeah, I agree with you, Bob. I think we probably need to do that at the next meeting. So I'll give you a call later. We can strategize how to do that.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is, if possible, let's just say we're going to do that. And if you can publish an advised agenda so the public would be aware we're going to talk about it.
Yep, I'll put a revised agenda out today.
All right.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. It should be an action item so people know. So, all right, what else? Anything else? No? Okay. Thank you all. This has been fantastic as usual. I appreciate the time. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.